Yesterday's Apple presentation, where the company unveiled the iPhone 17 and other new products, unexpectedly turned into not just a technological event, but a potential starting point of a global economic crisis. What should have been a routine update of the smartphone lineup, sparking the usual excitement among fans and adding tens of billions of dollars to the company's market value, was perceived very differently in the corridors of global politics. According to several leading outlets, from the Financial Times to Nikkei Asia, a number of states deliberately used this date as a symbolic moment to strike at the very heart of the American economy. The key players in this hidden intrigue are China and India, the two largest developing economies, according to think tanks in Beijing and New Delhi, have become the main victims of Donald Trump's tariff war. In India, rising duties crushed exports of textiles and pharmaceuticals to the United States, leaving millions of workers facing layoffs. In China, losses in the electronics sector amounted to billions, with plummeting orders and slowing GDP growth. And now, insiders say, these two states are preparing an unthinkable move, a full ban on sales of Apple's new products in their markets. The official wording, sources claim, will be extremely harsh, a threat to national security and risks of espionage. Chinese state media have for weeks been publishing articles about suspicious technologies in the iPhone 17, hinting at built-in chips allegedly capable of transmitting data directly to US intelligence services. In India, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is pushing his Make in India program, Apple has been branded a symbol of technological dependence on America. According to the Indian newspaper The Hindu, authorities are considering revoking sales licenses under the pretext of certification violations and risks of data leaks. Adding intrigue is the fact that just a week before the presentation, China hosted the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. At a closed-door meeting between Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi, the issue of technological independence and coordinated action against Western corporations was discussed. Sources close to the delegations claim that it was then that a preliminary decision was made to use the iPhone 17 launch as a political lever of pressure on the United States. Bloomberg, citing unnamed diplomats, reports that the tone of the talks was unprecedentedly tough, with Modi and Xi concluding that the time has come for the economy to become the main weapon. For Apple, the consequences of such a scenario would be catastrophic. China and India are the company's two largest markets after the United States, together accounting for hundreds of millions of device sales and up to 40% of global revenue. Losing these countries could mean a $1 trillion drop in market capitalization and a stock crash that would inevitably hit US pension funds, investment firms, and the entire financial system. According to Wall Street Journal experts, Apple serves as a kind of anchor of trust in the American tech sector. If that anchor is torn loose, the effects will ripple across the entire NASDAQ and even the S&P 500. The White House is well aware that the situation is spinning out of control. For Donald Trump, who has spent years waging a tariff war against China and accusing India of unfair trade, a blow against Apple would be a direct response to his own policies. It is an irony of fate. The very protectionist agenda designed to safeguard American jobs now threatens America's largest corporation. According to Washington insiders, Trump's advisors are already discussing possible preemptive measures, including sanctions against Indian IT companies and restrictions on Chinese manufacturers' access to US cloud services. But analysts warn, such steps would only accelerate the process of global economic fragmentation. On Wall Street, the reaction so far remains restrained, but unease is palpable. Major funds have already begun cutting their positions in Apple stock, fearing political risk. Reuters reports that several hedge funds have urgently shifted assets into gold and bonds, preparing for a possible crash. Some experts compare the current situation to the Huawei moment, when the Chinese corporation suddenly came under global sanctions and lost key markets. The difference now is that it is not a Chinese company, but a symbol of American power that is under threat. Meanwhile, events in Asia are unfolding rapidly. Chinese social media is overflowing with hashtags like No iPhone 17, while Indian nationalists call for a boycott of American brands. All of this is framed as a response to US economic aggression. According to Japan's Kyodo News, Beijing and New Delhi are even discussing a joint statement on the creation of a technological independence alliance, which could also include Iran, Pakistan, and several Central Asian states. That is why many experts describe yesterday's Apple presentation not as the beginning of a new smartphone era, but as the beginning of a global crisis. If the ban does go into effect, the blow will not only hit Apple, but the entire US economy, since the company's stock is part of the portfolios of millions of investors worldwide. For Donald Trump, it will be a new challenge, the consequences of his own tariff war turning against America's largest corporation. Today, it is difficult to predict exactly how events will unfold, but one thing is clear: the situation has moved far beyond the tech world. The iPhone 17 has become not just a device, but a tool of geopolitics. And around it, one of the most dangerous economic games of recent years is now playing out. A particularly alarming factor is the potential cascade effect of the Apple crisis. According to Morgan Stanley analysts, if sales in China and India are halted for as little as 6 months, the company could lose up to 20% of its annual revenue. This would mean that by the end of 2025, Apple risks reporting its first quarterly revenue decline in over a decade. In the stock market, that would be a sell-off signal for investors. Hundreds of billions of dollars in market capitalization could evaporate in just weeks. Even worse, such volatility could bring down the entire tech sector, including Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, as trust in American corporations erodes. According to CNBC sources, top Silicon Valley executives are already discussing a domino effect scenario in private chats. If Apple is hit, the next targets could be Tesla, Qualcomm, and NVIDIA's production chains. We risk ending up in a situation where the entire US tech export sector is called into question. CNBC quotes one participant as saying, "On the geopolitical level, the situation is even more explosive. Washington realizes that if China and India show they are ready to coordinate actions against Apple, other BRICS countries will follow. South Africa and Brazil have already publicly called for equal conditions for national producers. And Russia, as reported by Interfax, is considering additional tariffs on American electronics. Together, this creates the impression of a growing front, directed not just against one company, but against the entire American economic model. Thus, what began as a flashy presentation of the new iPhone is turning into the threat of a global economic crisis. For the United States, it will be yet another test of resilience. For Donald Trump, a direct consequence of his tariff policy. And for Apple, a moment of truth. The question now is whether the company can find a way to overcome this challenge, or whether the iPhone 17 will go down in history not as a technological breakthrough, but as the symbol of the beginning of the fall of America's technological empire.